Welcome to Spotlight on the Arts. I'm Iris Acker. I'm your host today. I'd like you to meet our panel. First up is Michael McKeever, actor, playwright. And we have a guest panelist today, Marjorie Lowe, who is an actress, and my favorite theater critic, Mr. Bill Hirschman. And our guest today, producer, Kathi Glist. I love saying this, Kathi, I hope it's true. Hometown gal makes good. I know you so long, Kathi, and it's so wonderful to have you back again and again, because all that happens, I get more success and more success and more success. We're going to talk about all the Broadway now. I mean, that's great news. What's your biggest success to date?
I have to say Menopause the Musical.
Menopause. Let's talk about it. I've been
boasting that for 12 years now.
Wow. That's fantastic.
I know those shows don't come along very often. We at G4 are very proud to hang our hat on that one.
How did that come about? How did you first come across the project? And
you know, I was just a woman reading the Sun Sentinel one day, and I saw an ad for it in Palm Beach, and I said, I've got to see that show. A title like that needs to be seen and investigated. So I went with a good friend, Andy Rogo. We probably all know him because my husband said, I'm not going to see Menopause The Musical. And Andy and I went and we laughed and we had a great time. But more than that, I looked out at the audience and I said, I've never seen an audience reaction like this. There is something here. And the phenomenon and the success of Menopause the Musical is because it speaks to its audience member. You know, there are 4 girlfriends up there. The audience is the 5th girlfriend. They are sharing this sisterhood, and I think it's life-changing. Excuse the pun.
When you say success, you should give people some sense of the scope. I mean, you have. Is it playing virtually all the time somewhere?
It really is. I think we're going to have a week in December that for the first time in 12 years we will be dark, and that's because Luxor in Las Vegas is retrofitting the theater for a week or so.
Would you believe that?
We've been in Las Vegas for 8 years now.
Wow.
We continue to play there indefinitely. And when we came into that town with a show called Menopause the Musical, we said, what are we thinking? There are 135 pieces of entertainment a night to choose from in Las Vegas.
Right.
And we have a 5:30 time slot.
Oh, how awful, yes.
And you know what? We fill those houses every night.
Wow.
It's a universal subject. It's fun.
Unbelievable.
It's hilarious. It's a celebration.
I was just going to say, you've called it a celebration. So do you think there's something to that communal experience, that interactivity that has made it so successful?
It's relating. But you won't believe this, in Spanish?
Yes. In Spanish. Menopausia el musical.
How many productions has Menopause had at this point? How many? Do you know?
We've been in about 450 cities and hundreds of countries. Australia, United Kingdom. We are now going to South America with it. In Spanish, of course. Colombia, Peru. It's about to be translated into Portuguese for Brazil.
Wow.
And you know what? In any language, it seems to be as funny. I just spent about 6 weeks out in LA mounting the show. And I wondered, you know, is the humor the same? Will our music resonate in the Latina community? And it did, because the bottom line is, it is a celebration of women going through this time in their life where perhaps they are not feeling like celebrating. And I think this show helps give them their life back.
Now, are you finding that their husbands are coming with them as well?
Always. And I sort of coined the phrase, men love it too. The truth is, only about 10% of the audience is made up of men. A little more in Vegas, because the men are there, so they go. In the Latina community, many more men.
Wow.
I think maybe the ladies don't like to go out without their men, or the men don't like the ladies to go out.
But they're having as much fun.
The men are usually the first to stand, and one of my favorite lines over the years, a man in Seattle said early on, this show should be a mandatory workshop for all men. I love it.
Let's talk about more local successes. Motherhood?
Yes, we launched Motherhood the Musical right here at the Minnehaha Theater a couple of years back. Since then, it has played, produced by us, G4 Productions, in about 7-8 cities across the country, and now we're licensing it to regional theaters, so perhaps in next season you might see it in a theater near you in South Florida. I hope so.
You mentioned G4 Productions. Okay, I know you're one of the initial producers of it.
Yeah,
let's talk
one of
about
the
it. Tell me
founders.
about G4.
You know, G4 started off with my husband, Alan, and myself, 2 of the Gs, and we combined with old dear friends, Sandy and Kenny Greenblatt. We had both been producing, us mostly locally with some, you know, dab at Broadway at that time, and Kenny had been producing on Broadway, and Malzy Lawrence, the great comedian, actually got us together. He said, you guys have to meet. He didn't know that we had already met. And we were producing at the Broward Center at that time, doing our series in the Amaturo many years ago, and we just rebonded and said, let's get together and have some fun in South Florida. And at the time we were producing I Love You, You're Perfect, Now Change. Still one of my favorite shows.
Did you do that at Actors Playhouse first?
We did that at Actors
For a couple of
Playhouse.
years, right?
We did it there for a few years, then at the Broward Center, and then in Wilton Manors, and any theater that we could find a nice long run at, actually.
It's interesting that you get involved with long runs like this. How do you keep the product fresh over a long period of time, particularly when you've got X number of companies out there and you have more than one show that you're watching? How do you keep the quality high so that what you fell in love with initially is still operational 9 months, 15 months down the road?
You know, that's a really great question. And other than the basics, you know, is the set falling apart? How do the props look? Do we need to update the costumes? On a show that you pretty much don't change the script. Sometimes you just change the actresses. Sometimes you don't. We have girls. Patty Gardner, one of my local favorites and dear friends, is still playing soap star for us on tour across the country.
Margot Moreland.
Margot Moreland, you know. I can remember saying to Stacey Schwartz, when you grow up, you can be in Menopause The Musical. And guess what? She's now in Menopause The Musical.
12 years later, 10 years later.
So I'm curious, if you have, there's the Greenblatts and yourself and your husband, do you all have to agree on your choices? When you decide to, I'm going to produce this, do you find that it's in agreement across the board?
Well, if I could add on to that, because you obviously have the golden touch. You've had such great success. When you're looking at a piece, when the 4 of you are looking at something that, you know, this is going to be a G4 product, what do you look for? Who finds it? I mean, and how does that decision happen?
You know, ever since Menopause, we get almost every script, a 4-person musical that you can ever imagine, particularly about middle age or life changes, they come our way. Everything from Prostate the Musical to many shows that David Risco, frankly, has ended up doing at Actors so well. So we get many scripts. Seth Greenleaf, who is the artistic director in our company now and for the last several years, reads every script that comes our way, goes to all these readings. He's sending me up to the west coast of Florida this week to see a new show called New Wrinkles.
Oh, that's cute. Cute title.
Cute title. I'm flying to New York in the next week or so to see 2 readings of shows. And when we were in New York in LA with Menopause, Seth said, new great show, throwing a reading together, and it's a phenomenal show of the ilk of vagina monologues and love, loss of and what I wore, but about women and weight loss. But although it's very funny, it also resonates very deeply. I think it will be another very empowering show for women, speaking about our self-concepts. So we look at the show. Does it first speak to us? You know, are we moved either to laughter or tears? Do we feel good inside? Can we relate to it? And then you immediately do have to go to what do we think the audience will think and feel. And thank you for your rave reviews on our great success. There are some that have gotten away over the years, Michael, where we don't make the best choices and decisions.
I was going to ask you about failures. Yeah. Yes.
You know, I'll choose not to call them a failure. I'll call them, you know, little tidbits of information we pick up along the way, or something new that we've learned.
A learning experience.
A great opportunity to grow. And sometimes it's just timing. You know, here's the one that got away that somehow I'm still sort of giving myself a hard time about, and that's Jersey Boys.
Oh, wow.
Oh, tell us about that. What do you mean?
You know, it was about a week after we closed La Cage aux Folles' first revival on Broadway, Jerry Mitchell's production. We had just won the Tony Award for Best Revival. We were so proud of it. It was a grand, glorious, magnificent production. And then we got the call about Jersey Boys. And I can remember my husband and Kenny at the time saying, "Done with Broadway. That's it. You know, we win the Tony and we lost all our money. We need to take a break and stick to great small shows." And we actually had an opportunity to come back to it and chose not to. We were thinking, oh, Jersey Boys, great show. And we sent a representative out to see it. That show belongs off-Broadway. Let's go down to a cast of about 10. And the Dodger organization wouldn't hear of that. And guess what? They were right.
That's interesting. What we haven't quite directly said is that you also produce or have money in or have influence in several Broadway productions.
That are running, sure,
so
forever.
What is the relationship between a producer of your experience and your level when you're working with monsters like the Dodger Theatricals and the Hugh Jampson Theaters and the people who are the people who actually get to stand in front of the microphone when the Tony is given? So what is your relationship to an ongoing production that's being developed?
I think that G4 Productions, as producers, investors, ambassadors, if you will, of theater, and now producing quality work for many years, we are now, I believe, really respected in the Broadway community, particularly because of Ken Greenblatt's experience and his son, Seth Greenleaf, who really has sort of taken over after his dad moved here, and is very much in the Broadway crowd. The interesting thing is when we first would go to the big production meetings and PR and marketing meetings, I can remember sitting in the group of these big Broadway people that I admired since I was a kid and felt very intimidated in their presence. And bit by bit, we'd start speaking up a little. And my favorite time probably on that famous street was when in one of those meetings they literally asked us our opinion on marketing. Because the truth is there are not many shows that can boast of the success such as Menopause the Musical.
Right.
So I think that we are welcomed into the community. We at one time said if we couldn't be a part of the growth of the show and giving birth to the show, we would not be involved. Since that time, that's changed. We've become a little smarter. If we're invited to invest in shows that we think will be great, the Matildas of the world, Glass Menagerie, even though they came both from London or art in Boston, we say yes. We happily say yes, even if we don't have a say in what ultimately is on the stage. But we're certainly impressed by great work.
Ask. Once you put money in, do you have a say?
Iris, sometimes you do, and sometimes you sort of zip up. And again, Seth has become really a welcome team member in all of these pre-meetings. And he was on the doorstep of the Royal Shakespeare Company shortly after Matilda opened. It was a show that he had his eye on, and he showed me footage from it very early on. And you know what I always say, the authors that get their work produced by G4 are the ones that stalk us the most.
Interesting.
And he stalked them until they finally said yes. And there's no ego involved because G4's name is not even on that program. But we are so proud just to have a small part of it. And we just celebrate with them every time we go to the theater and watch that incredible work on the stage, because it is incredible.
Yet with your tours, you have the reputation of being a very hands-on producer in a positive way, marketing and design and sales. Do you think that's essential to your success?
I think so. I think, you know, somebody once asked, what does a producer do? And when we first became a producer, I wasn't even sure I knew the answer to that. So we got, you know, thrown into the fire and learned and rolled up our sleeve and painted sets.
Well,
and
I was going to say, give us a breakdown now. What exactly does a producer? What do you do? Just to help the people watching who may not know.
You know, if we are really creating a show for the first time or workshopping a new piece of work, we get it from the very first time it is on paper. And Michael, you know, you're an author. You take a look, and very rarely what you first put down as an author or playwright on that page is not what is going to end up on the stage.
That's the truth.
And one thing that we've discovered is we like to really work with authors who are open-minded to allowing our input. And we're very collaborative as a team of producers, and we've worked with some great authors over the years. We've worked with some tough ones, you know, some that really feel that their word is gospel. If we feel the show is great enough, we might go along with them. If we think it needs work and they don't think so, we take a pass. We take a pass.
Finances, we're always interested in finances. I mean, I'm not talking about investing in Broadway shows, but, you know, just getting a show up, you have equity to deal with or not to deal with. I mean, choices, you have equity companies and non-equity companies, and I know that influences your casting.
You know, we as a company have always chosen to work with equity actors, and in fact, very often at an audition, a very talented non-equity actor, actress will come our way, and we will invite them to join us, and we join them into equity. And many, both local and nationwide, young and not so young women have come across our paths and become equity actresses. We like working, we don't mind working with the union, and we work well with them. In fact, Menopause the Musical is the largest employer of actresses in the United States, particularly actresses of age, because there's not that much work for women over 40 on the stage.
That's wonderful. That's great.
What else does a producer do? I mean, on a daily basis, what would you be doing?
Well, on a daily basis, I work with the group sales team. I try to encourage and inspire them and think about who we can reach out to. We come up with new ideas every day of new groups of people we can reach out to every day. I work with marketing teams. If it's a new show, we work with designers, we work with the creators, we work with directors, musical directors, arrangers, lighting designers, sound designers.
In the sense of consulting with them about what the vision is, and when you say, I work with the set designer, what is it that you do?
You know, if you have hired your director, then very often you defer to your director and ask your director what their vision is for the piece, for the show. And very often they know what they want. With this new piece that we're looking at, it's called Such a Pretty Face, or Does This Make Me Look Fat? And tell me what woman has not asked that question. I actually asked that question last week, and I did not like Alan's answer at all. So I said, okay, I guess this show is going to work. But
Interesting.
In that case, we're saying, should we go the route of its two predecessors, which are sort of monologues that three actresses read? Do we open it up and add a fourth actress? I think we take the next step and let them learn the roles and have some multimedia surrounding them. So as a team, we talk amongst ourselves. Seth, as the artistic director, will work with this author. And hopefully in about a year from now, we'll have our first production.
And I know in the past you've done workshops, readings, so you'll kind of try a little bit of everything till you get the right product.
We really do. And sometimes it can take months, and sometimes it can take years. And there are great writers out there. You're one of the lucky ones because you'll write something and it will get produced quickly, or someone will commission you to write, Michael. But more often than not, authors work on their pieces for many, many years before they are produced, if they are ever produced.
But now you have to talk and brag a little bit about your 37 Tonys that
Lots
you
of
have
Tonys.
Nominations. I think it was how many? 98 or
In the 90s.
because you have an extensive list of Broadway shows.
We do. We do. Last year was a very good year. We received 4 Tonys for Matilda. We won Best Revival of a Play for
Last Menagerie?
nope, that'll be next year.
That'll be next year. That's something.
Lips to God's ears.
Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?
Yeah, amazing.
That's right.
And we are producing the national tour of Porgy and Bess, going all through Florida, launched in San Francisco. The great Diane Paulus reconception of a classic, a classic.
Book of Mormon.
Book of Mormon. It's in London right now on Broadway, coming here. So it's, you know, thing of it is, you want to do what energizes you and what you feel passionate about in life, and it's good to be doing what we love to do.
You know, there's no classes or courses in producing, directing, of course, playwriting, acting, of course. So is it on-the-job training that you had?
You know, I really started as an actress. I was a thespian.
There we go.
Miami Beach Senior High School. I grew up down here, and the great Jay Jensen, if you know him, was my drama teacher. And it's so funny, when I was sitting and watching Glass Menagerie opening night, I saw the scene work that we did in that class. And I sat there with goosebumps, and my husband said to me, I almost enjoyed watching you more than I enjoyed watching Cherry Jones and Zachary Quinto, the masters that they are. And I sat there on the edge of my seat. I grew up with Glass Menagerie, but to see it done to this perfection, and as a little girl, I think I dreamt about being involved in theater one way or another. And I sort of left the acting behind. It's tough to do when you can't sing, you can't dance, and you're an okay actress. But I knew that it spoke to my soul, and it still does.
I love that, spoke to my soul.
Well, when you're, you know, if there was a producers university and they asked you to come be the guest lecturer, are there 3 or 4 things that you have learned that you go, boy, I wish somebody had told me this, that you can give to other people that are thinking about, gee, I always wanted to be a producer, besides find Zero Mostel? What have you learned that you could pass on?
I would say the first one might not sound like a positive, but it's all too true. Just about the time you think you know everything about it, you learn something new.
Oh, I think that's great advice. I think that's really smart advice.
In every aspect of theater.
Yes, I'm sure as an actress too. And I think that the only sure thing about theater is there is no sure thing about theater. So many times you never go into a show, whether it's with investing or producing, thinking it's going to not succeed or be a flop or get bad reviews. And there's nothing like that high when that opening night curtain comes down and you enter your opening night party to the reviews coming out at midnight and getting a less than favorable review.
Wow.
You know, it's not fun to be in that marketing meeting the day after.
It must feel like a child that you're sending out into the world, and then it's criticized.
I do equate this. You know, my greatest role to date is that of being a mother. And now grandmother.
Bravo.
And it really is like giving birth. It is like giving birth.
Well, it's also it's an interesting role to play, because it's such an important part to play in the production of any piece of theater, and yet in many ways it's very invisible. It's so behind the scenes that people don't realize that you're there, and the important part that the producer plays in putting that piece on that stage.
You know, Michael, just like we let go of our children one day, you know, you have to let go of your theater pieces and put them in the hands of the experts, say a little prayer, and bless it, and surround yourself by great people.
There you go.
Surround yourself by great people.
Oh, I love that. You'd be my first on my list.
Thank you.
Learn. I believe very strongly if I was going to think of being a producer, I think was to work for a producer. What I call that on-the-job training. You know, maybe it'll rub off on me, or maybe I would learn this is not really for me. How else can you tell? So you don't need courses. You need a mail clerk's job, as they say. Work your way up from the mail clerk and stay close to somebody. Like, that didn't happen with you. You just plunged in.
You know,
She had passion.
I had passion. My daughter at the time was in shows, and my husband said at one time, it would be cheaper to be a producer than to have our daughter be in shows and buy everybody tickets to come see it. I'm not sure he was right, but we had a great time.
So where do you see the future going for G4, or what would you like to see?
You know, I think it's more of the same. I really like these shows that you feel better when you leave than when you walked in the door.
Oh, I think we'll leave on that. Better when you leave than when you walked in the door. I think we have to use that as the curtain.
I'll take it. I'll
This
take
wonderful
it.
thing. Wasn't this wonderful? I
Yes,
love it.
absolutely.
Thank you all
Kathy.
for
Thank
having
you
me.
once again, wonderful. I hope you agree with us. Certainly do. And success. Again, as I say, hometown girl, so we keep her close to us and close to our heart. We thank you for joining us. We hope that you will go to the theater as we encourage you to, and to continue to watch us and find out what's going on in the theater. Just go to floridatheateronstage.com. So much happening, so much of the time.